Great. So today we have Tina Hager, who is a former White House photographer, and she had covered George Bush #2 for us, and very, very excited to have you. In fact, we're pre-recording because at the moment she lives in Dubai, and we're hoping that everybody remains safe. I just want to thank a few of our sponsors, which is Pro Photo Daily, Photo Shelter, Epson, American Photography, and B&H. So with that, I will allow you to make you a co-host. Let's see how we do that. Invite. See, no, get rid of that. Let's see. Who can share? No, all participants. All right. So you should be able to share your screen. You hit the green button down in the middle there.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Okay.
So tell us how it all started, how this whole gig happened for you, dear.
Well, I was a photojournalist for many years beforehand. So I worked all over the world in 65 countries and covering nice things and bad things. And trouble just followed me around. I applied with a portfolio and a resume, and that's how I got in. I did a lot of research of who to apply to,
Right.
and then I had a bunch of interviews, and then I had to pass the good girl test to make sure that my security clearance was okay, and then I got the job. So that was the honor of a lifetime.
And how long is the process? Once you apply.
I think I applied in January, and I had sent in a portfolio. Back then you could send in stuff to the White House. I sent in a beautiful leather bound portfolio, and I was in Colombia at the time. It was March, I think. And I called in and I asked them to please send the portfolio back because there was a guy checking my mail every day to make sure it wasn't sitting out in the rain.
Yeah.
And and they said, well, we want you to come in for an interview. So I was on the next plane out.
Wow. And is it intense competition? I mean, like, do a ton of people apply?
I think so, but they never told me how many people applied.
Okay. All right. Great. So you get the call, you do your interview, and then you're in.
Yep, yep.
Right.
There you go. And you get the process, the background clearance. The initial background clearance took about 3 months.
Right.
So I didn't start until about a month before 9/11, and the president was still in Crawford at that time.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it was fairly quiet. And this was the view out of our office. We had the main office was down in the West Wing. This is the West Wing here.
Right.
And but our desks were way up in the old executive office building, the EOB. And it was a beautiful view, but it was a lot of stairs to run down if you had to be on duty quickly.
Right. Get there in a hurry. Yeah. Okay. Go. Great.
Okay, so everything seemed normal when I started, and then let me 9/11 happened, and this is 9/11. I followed Condi around at least to the bunker, and then I couldn't get in. But mercifully, David Borer, the vice president's photographer, was there. But here she is waiting for the president to return on 9/11. So
Wow.
that all seemed kind of the the stress of it all seemed kind of normal to me, given what I had covered before.
Wow.
And this is shortly after nine, I think around 9/12. I won't bore you with the dates, but
Well,
being
that's okay.
thrown into that was, and going into the Oval Office for the first time is daunting because you
Yeah.
just don't know if you're disturbing them or if you're in the way. And so the first days were kind of difficult, but then you get used to it, and then you realize that they're just ignoring you. So, which is a good thing. It's a good thing to be ignored.
Right. And I mean, this whole process, you're in the White House now. You're running around the White House. I mean, how does that feel? I mean, especially a seasoned veteran like yourself. I mean, you were still in awe of it all.
Very much in awe. And sometimes, like if there are big gatherings, you have to push your way through really important people, other presidents and stuff. So you kind of have to ignore the noise, as it were. It's quite daunting in the beginning, but you relax and you realize that. And the president was very good about ignoring us, except when there was something going on, he would kick us out a lot. So I got kicked out quite a bit during security briefings and FBI briefings and
And does
CIA
that
briefings.
and does that come right from the president or his handlers? I mean, how does that work? Or you just know this is going somewhere else. I should be leaving. I
Oh,
know.
pretty much but sometimes he'll just say Tina.
Okay. Okay.
And this one, I love this one, but we released the photo. I wasn't in charge of releasing it, but it was released, and then I think we got in a little bit of trouble because his feet were on the table. But I love the photo anyway.
Right.
This is Laura Bush. I did a lot of portraits of her. Portraits is sort of my forte, so I was honored to do portraits of her.
And how did that relationship develop between you and her?
Oh, just very slowly. She asked me to do some portraits, and then, I guess, people aren't used to, especially the first lady or the president isn't used to the photographer telling them what to do, like put your chin down and,
Right.
turn your head a little bit. And so that was kind of a growing process
For both of you.
for both of us. Barbara Bush was there a lot, and the two of them together were a hoot. They had so much humor, and Barbara Bush just was so funny all the time. We were at Crawford once, and Bush 41, President Bush 41, offered to take me to the ranch in his pickup from the little trailer where we would stay. And she was like, "Honey, don't get in that car. He hasn't driven in 40 years."
And
Great.
I mean that part of it. All right. So now you're in the truck with 41. I mean, are we still a journalist or are we becoming friendly, part of the family? Like, how does that work? Like,
Oh, just
do you still take out your camera or do you just let the situation go?
no, I just rode along with him.
Right. I mean, that's got to be a really wonderful feeling that you've sort of broken through, manner of
Yeah,
speaking.
it was lovely. He was
Yeah.
just lovely, and they were lovely to be around.
Everyone says that about them. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the vice president, obviously, and the president, but people don't realize how funny the vice president was. And I was the third photographer for the president, which meant that I was like a floater
Right.
for the vice president when his photographer, David Borer, needed a break, which he worked all the time. So every now and then he needed a weekend off. And I got to cover the first lady when Susan Sterner was taking a break or, on a sick leave or something. And then Condi, I got to cover Condi quite a bit, which was great. And we developed a good relationship even after the White House.
Is that right? Okay.
There's Bush 41, and this is one of the times where, in the very beginning, where we were still using black and white film.
Mm.
And you can see a little hair in the middle of this picture from the
There
state.
you go. Yeah.
But yeah, Bush 41 was there a lot, and it's amazing how similar they look.
Yeah. And I mean, it is a 24/7 job, right? I mean, like no matter where these guys go, there's always a photographer, generally
Annoying,
speaking.
annoying as such. Yeah,
Yeah.
my boss would make the schedule in the morning, and then you just discover where you were going to be that day. And usually split it up to somebody would do, mornings to afternoons and somebody would do evenings. But he worked all the time until 10 o'clock at night. And then that was when he went to bed, no later.
Right.
So you kind of had that, but he got up very early and there was a lot to cover. So we were able to
And,
split it.
and in the White House, are there ever days where they say, no photographers all day and you have the day off? I mean, can they do something like that?
They never did. They never did. The president would, make us leave every now and then if he didn't want us around, but
Right.
that would be apparent. So he wasn't shy.
Okay. Yes. So tell me a little bit about Nancy. I know we didn't speak about that
Oh,
photo.
she was just lovely. I don't really know her very well, but was able to capture a couple moments with her.
Yeah, she was treated, but with respect from the Bushes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This one, I just like the light, and Air Force One is always fun to photograph on. And we had our own seat on Air Force One. And after 9/11, we had like a complete photo equipment. We had film and digital and all the cameras and everything was on the plane and ready just in case. So we had an assigned seat. This one I just like. It just
Yeah, it's fun.
behind you, Mr. President. This was Fort Hood. He loved the troops. What people don't know is that after every engagement, he would meet with the families of fallen soldiers, and this was all private. No press was involved, and the press didn't even know mostly, or they would tell them, but it was a very private moment, and he just adored the troops.
And who's coordinating all that, Tina? Excuse me. Who's coordinating all of that? This is just White House photographers, no press. Who's running that?
I think that's mostly the advanced teams
Okay.
and his staff. Certainly wasn't us. This is Condi. I just love the photo. This was funny. I decided one day that I wanted to get a different angle, and I asked the Secret Service if I could go on top of the Oval Office. And when he was coming in on the motorcade, I guess they announced there's a photographer on the Oval Office. And they said, please repeat, in the Oval Office? And they were like, no, on the Oval Office.
You were in a lot of people's sights.
Yeah. Gandhi did not like fishing. This is on the ranch in Crawford.
Oh,
Barney
is that
quite
right?
enjoyed it. Barney's the dog, but you can tell that Condi is not having it.
Yeah. And did you know that she didn't like going out on the lake?
Oh, she would announce it.
Oh, she would. Okay.
You can just see by her posture that she
Yeah,
wasn't.
yeah, for sure. So over time, you guys, the photographers, really become an extension, maybe not of their families, but you're really part of the team in every way.
We're like the court jester. We're like the
Right.
court jester. They make fun of us a lot, and a lot of jokes will be made about the photographer. And I remember one time when it was my birthday and the president made everyone in the security briefing, I think it was the CIA director or the FBI director, saying happy birthday to me.
There you go. Great.
This is in Crawford on the ranch, where he could be himself and cut brush and drive his own pickup. And I think he quite enjoyed being able to have that freedom.
And at the time, Andy Card is his chief of staff. Is that right?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Andy is an amazing, amazing man. He would, when I would come in the morning, he would ask the cleaners if he can help them carry up the vacuum cleaner or something. I
Is that
mean,
right?
kind to everybody. He treated everybody equally, and that was just awe-inspiring.
Mm.
I think this is Mexico. The president was extremely physically fit, and he would invite often the writers or the press pool to go run with him. or the ones who were runners, and
Right.
bike with him. And he still does it to this day. He has Wounded Warrior bike rides in Crawford on the ranch, and he really was physically fit. This is just a nice moment, but it's how the president always made everyone feel like they were the only one in the room. And he genuinely had that connection to people.
Right.
It's another moment in the Oval Office. I think this is David Bloom's family, who was a writer and killed in Iraq War. And this is his family. And I don't know what they were doing, but the lighter moments in the Oval Office were always enjoyable. Like every visit, it was
Yeah.
like he always.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Bloom end up in a tank and he didn't move for a long period of time. Um, I thought that's something happened with him. I'll look at,
I do not recall. I'm sorry.
yeah, I gotta look that up myself.
Rain nor shine.
Yeah. And do you ever get a sense of him being nervous before a speech or totally comfortable? He was easy with it. You know, any sense of like his personal quirks on speaking?
Never, never. Every now and then he would misspeak or make a mistake, and everybody would be like, "Mm." And he would say, "What did I say? What did I say?" This is the motorcade in Thailand. I just thought the motorcades were so cool, and it
Yeah,
was just really, really awesome being in a motorcade. Except this particular motorcade, we had to meet the king of Thailand, and I had a suit with me, a very fancy suit. But women were supposed to wear skirts, so it's Thailand. You can get a suit made or skirt made in
right,
like flowers. So I had this beautiful silk suit with a long skirt down to my ankles because it had to cover your ankles.
right.
And they didn't put a slit in it. So the opening was so narrow, I couldn't run to the motorcade. I had to take little baby steps. And it was, it was like a geisha girl running to the motorcade. And the Secret Service was rooting for me. It was because there's a lot of running involved in
Yeah.
motorcades.
Yeah, give us a little sense on the Secret Service. How do you guys get on with them, generally speaking?
Oh, awesome. Oh, awesome. They were like a bunch of big brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we get along well. And they would make jokes how if something ever happened to the president, they would push the photographer into the way and then run.
Great. And over time, how did your relationship with Laura grow?
Laura Bush was just gentle and kind and very supportive. And there's a project that I worked on that I'll show you in just a little bit. And she inspired me to finish it. And because it was something I had to do in my free time, and Laura was like, I think you should finish it now, Tina. And she was just lovely to work with, and just very gentle soul.
Mhm.
This is the queen. Unusually the photographers in well, most of the countries in the world have official photographers, except for the English. The British don't seem to have official photographers. And she was very mistrustful in the beginning of the photographer being around, but after there had been dinner and maybe a little bit of imbibing, she relaxed, and it was a nice moment.
And an event like that when the Queen is coming or another leader from another country, can you feel an actual difference in the president and the first lady? Like this is really going to be a special night, that kind of a thing?
Well, this was in London, so we were
Okay.
we were there, yes. And yeah, sometimes, but normally it's just business as usual.
Right.
I just like this moment.
Yeah.
nothing to say about it.
Yeah.
This was obviously Pope Paul and Pope John Paul. And I was way in the back because there was, I think, two or three photographers there. On a big trip, they take maybe three photographers, and this was a big trip. So I was in the back with the press corps, and then the Pope suddenly invited all of the press corps, everybody in the back, to come up and get blessed. And I was blessed by the Pope, which was just a remarkable experience.
Bet. I bet. Vatican.
At the Vatican.
Mm.
And that's just flying in helicopters never gets old. I'm sorry. It's just cool.
Yeah. So now, like time has passed, and does it ever get normal, Tina? This whole experience of
No,
being.
no, it never, I mean, it gets normal, but to this day, I still have nightmares about missing a motorcade.
Oh, really?
I'll still wake up and go, oh, phew, I didn't really miss it. It was just a bad dream. So it does leave its mark on you. It's like 4 years of not being able to exhale. You do have to really mind yourself and be put together all the time. And not only does your hair have to be right, but your mind has to be right. And you have to, you have to not breathe.
And do they prep you completely, like this is 24/7, this is every day? There are no days off. I mean, do you really get like beforehand? I mean, I guess the experience itself is something else, but you're really prepped well on how intense this is?
Nope, nope, you just get
No.
thrown right into it.
Okay.
This was at Reagan's funeral. And after the president left, all the leaders and ex-presidents, and I mean, Gorbachev was there, and they were all meeting outside of the cathedral, the Washington Cathedral. And that's Teresa Heinz Kerry and Bush 41 and President Carter and John Kerry. And it was just remarkable to see the Secret Service step back and let all the leaders catch up, and there were just friendships that you didn't realize existed.
Right.
And it was just a really nice time to catch some candid photos.
It really is an exclusive club, right?
It very much is, yeah. This was a hunting trip with Vice President Dick Cheney. I think David Borer needed a well-deserved break, and I got to go on a hunting trip. And I really enjoyed photographing the vice president. Like I said, he had such a good sense of humor, which people don't realize. They think he was this steely, strong man who didn't have a sense of humor, but he was very lighthearted and a good equestrian.
And did you ride also?
No, I walked alongside with my camera.
Okay.
And there's Barney and the putting green. I don't think that's there anymore, but. And this sort of takes me into the series that I'm about to show you. This is just the elevator and Jacques Chirac and the president just having a moment. But there's a doorman there. And what people don't realize, and this is the series that I'm most proud of, is when I first started at the White House, they asked me if there were any projects that I wanted to do. And I said, yes, I'd love to do a project on the White House residence staff, sort of like upstairs, downstairs. There's an old series, I think maybe like Downton Abbey or something. And there's about 100 people that work at the White House. No matter who's president, they're there. Some had been there 50 years. And they are butlers, they're electricians, they're carpenters, they're maids, they're ushers, who are sort of the managers of. It's run like a hotel. And this is a black and white series. and it was shot with a Hasselblad. And I think it's the last time that black and white film was ever used at the White House.
And
And what
what made you want to do this? Like, how did that thought come to mind? And it's amazing that it hadn't been done before.
I know it had never been done before, and I don't know why it hadn't been done before, but and the staff couldn't really understand why I wanted to take their portraits. And at first it was
Mm.
very hard sell. And then towards the end they were like, "When are you doing my portrait?"
Oh yeah, there you go. It always
And
happens, yeah.
I wanted each portrait to be a presidential portrait reflecting the kind of reverence that existed at the White House.
And how many total were you able to accomplish?
I think there was like 98,
Oh, is that
and
right? Wow.
it was an exhibit for a very long time. This is Harold. Harold is no longer with us, but or his Spot for that matter. But
Right.
I
And
just loved meeting them and getting to know them, and just the whole process was wonderful. But I could only do it in my free time, and this is where Laura Bush stepped in and said, "I think you should finish the project, Tina." So
so
she,
she says something like that. That sort of has ripples, right? Where
yep,
access is going to be given, right? She's behind the project.
yep.
Um,
And then it was no longer trying. Everybody was asking when I would take their portrait. So,
all right,
and what I wanted to show were, I mean, obviously there are places in the White House that you would see on a tour, but sometimes there are details or rooms that you would never see, like the Lincoln bedroom, or the details on the fine linens that they have. And Annie Ramsey, he would just,
and you have little bios on each one.
I do, but I don't know how private they want to remain. So I I try to keep that to myself.
Okay. And do you ever think of a book on these portraits?
I did think of a book for these portraits. That would be really wonderful, but I haven't pushed it. It was an exhibit at the White House Visitor Center for about 10 years, which was really nice.
Wow.
And you get to see places like the steam room, where, the boiler room, I think this is, where you would never normally go on a White House tour.
So
The bowel,
this is underneath the White House.
correct, correct. And the Secret Service approved all of the photos. They went through them and said, yep, they're all good. Nothing to hide here. And I would do little details like mimicking the portrait of
Right.
Roosevelt in the background. And
And did that gentleman, did he know that you were mimicking the image behind him?
probably not.
Right. That's great.
Little hidden secrets.
Yeah, I mean, all these images really show how proud these folks are. Very
They
nice.
are. They are. And I wanted each of them to feel like they were special. And Dale was the head gardener.
You know,
He was
it
there for a good 50 years too.
really, it's interesting seeing all of them. They're so well maintained themselves. They all look so good. They're not like your normal, whatever normal is, your normal landscaper, right? I mean, like they're in the White House and they have a reverence to the White House as well.
Exactly. You'd never
Yeah.
see anyone be rude or inconsiderate, or yeah,
Or,
exactly.
or drinking a beer, taking a break, right? Very nice.
Again.
Yeah, they're beautiful. And of your exhibit, how many images do you have in the exhibit?
There's close to 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now I think it's been taken down. I don't know. I know that they have a new visitor center or something. I haven't been to see it, but I know that some of my photos are hanging there, which is lovely. And I love the details in the White House. I mean, every first lady has their own touch, but
Right.
there were so many little details. The head plumber,
Great. That's really wonderful.
Susie. Pastry chef was always our favorite place to go because we got free samples. And the flower shop. I loved the flower shop.
So there's a flower shop in the White House.
Yeah, there was about four
Wow.
floors. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's remarkable. Again, the details of the plates. Electrician.
And your period of time is completely the second Bush administration.
Correct. The first 4 years. I
Right.
left 2005, just before inauguration.
And the reason for leaving?
I had to go to Iraq and Afghanistan. That was just, my time had run out at the White House, and I couldn't help thinking, when I worked in Kosovo, I was thinking, I wonder how these decisions are made at the very top. And working at the White House, I was like, I wonder what it's like on the ground. And so I like that yin yang approach to
Yeah, yeah.
photography, both sides. This was
Oh,
a remarkable experience. This was the president's surprise trip to Baghdad in Iraq. And that was the most exciting experience I've been on at the White House, which was cloak and dagger. We had to go under the darkness of night. We were told very shortly before we were leaving if we were okay to go. And then we had to rustle up the journalists that were not going to be missed. And obviously, it was Thanksgiving. So I had actually planned to take Thanksgiving off. And since there was nothing going on at the Crawford, I had to work Thanksgiving, and then I got to go on this remarkable trip. So
so you get 2 days notice on that, Tina?
no, we just got a few hours notice.
Few hours. Okay. So, all right. Do you want to go? Yes, I can go. And then you're not allowed to tell anybody. I mean, can you tell your husband or a friend?
Nobody, nope, and nobody, tell nobody, not even my boss. So I
Really?
had to turn off my phone and turn off my pager, and everything went dark. And we left a few hours later and gathered up some of the press corps to go with us. And it was very cloak and dagger. And then we flew to Washington, D.C., where we put the plane into a hangar. This is all well documented, so I'm not telling anything special, but the plane went into a hangar, and then the president got off that plane and got into the waiting plane, which was all fueled up and ready to go with all the countermeasures on it. And we snuck out that way. And
So,
here's the president in the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no. So the camaraderie on that plane of the few that get to go must be pretty intense.
Yeah, it was intense. And then we all got at least the people who were working with the president, who were in his proximity, we got BDUs to wear, the military gear to wear, so we would blend in and not look like geeks in a suit. So I had on army fatigues, and
Oh, is that right? Okay.
this is the president in the cockpit. We were just circling down into Baghdad, and a lot of people don't remember, but he was a pilot himself, so he really wanted to be up in the cockpit. And that's Colonel Tillman, who was the captain of Air Force One. And they renamed the plane. I think they renamed it like a Gulfstream or something like that. Because I think one plane did spot Air Force One on the way over to Baghdad. And they called out on the radio, is that Air Force One? And they said, negative, this is Gulfstream. And then they had a special number for the aircraft that they had written on a little piece of paper and posted it to the consul in the Air Force
Hmm.
One to remember the name. But that was a remarkable visit.
And tell me how the plane has to land, it like sort of in a
Oh
spiral,
yeah,
you said?
yeah. We would spiral down. So even the commercial flights into Baghdad later, when I was working there, would spiral down to avoid any missiles or ordnance. So it was a very steep spiral, and it was a very steep takeoff too. So that was interesting. This is after the White House.
Mhm.
This is Condi. I did a lot of work with Condi Rice after the White House. I had already moved to Dubai and was covering mostly Afghanistan and Iraq, but other countries as well, Beirut and or Lebanon and Syria and stuff like that. But I did a lot of work with her, and this was just a very lovely moment. She's an accomplished pianist, and she was practicing for a concert in, I think we were in Berlin, and it was just a lovely moment, just her playing, I think, Chopin. And I was just so thrilled to listen to her play for me. And then this happened, which he kind of ruined the shot, but then again, it's a good shot because it's Tony Blair, and he was very surprised that Condi was such an accomplished pianist, and he didn't know she played piano. And then they started chatting, and she was still trying to play.
Yeah. So she's practicing, right? She's rehearsing, and he just walks in. I mean, that had to be sort of an interesting moment where, don't you see I'm practicing? Don't you see I'm, rehearsing?
Yeah, I think they had a meeting set up, but he,
Okay, very nice.
she was probably one of the strongest women I've ever met, physically and mentally. And to this day, I just think she was just a remarkable person.
And how do you keep those relationships? Is it a delicate balance, or is it just feels right?
This one felt really right. I mean, I really adored Condi, and I adored working with her. And well, she knew that I was working in the Middle East. So when her trip to Baghdad, she had a surprise visit to Baghdad, and I was invited to go meet her at the airport. And at first they were like, no pictures, no pictures. And I'm like, it's okay, I was invited. And this was her in Baghdad. Oops, there we go. Um, I just liked the
Right.
juxtaposition. And then I'm going to end the photos with just what I said, the yin yang approach to photography. This is what I covered after the White House. I immediately went to Iraq and then Afghanistan. And I was embedded with troops. I worked for the Department of Defense. I worked for the State Department a bit, and for Dr. Rice, or Secretary Rice. And these are just some photos. This is Baghdad.
So let me ask you, Tina, how do you go from, like the White House and everything is just pristine and perfect to now a grunt, covering war? I mean, there's got to be moments where you're laying in bed or laying somewhere going to sleep. Was this the right decision? Like how did you do that in your head?
At some points, I thought this might be the wrong decision, but um, for the most part, it's what I do. So
Mm.
I don't know.
No regrets.
No regrets.
Great.
This is Ramadi, Baghdad again. I think that's Ghazaliya, busting down doors in Mosul.
And being a former White House photographer, does that get you any more access when you're doing this work?
Actually, it did, because I knew a lot of people who were working over there from the White House days. And so I did get assignments for the Department of Defense and for the
Ah,
State
okay.
Department doing things. And, if you don't write a book, then you're good to go.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I know that you don't talk, and So I got to cover a lot of various.
And I mean, at that point, you're working now for the State Department or the Army, whoever it is, and you're being paid by them directly,
Initially, I worked for Der Spiegel for three
right?
years.
Right.
And then I went on to work with a task force with Department of Defense that did economic development in war zones and task force for business and stabilization operations. And that was remarkable. But this work, most of what I'm showing you is for Der Spiegel, a lot of combat assignments and embeds with troops. I think this one was 3 para in Afghanistan, the British paratroopers. And ironically, they weren't allowed to trample the poppies. They had to be very careful about not destroying the precious poppy crops. So, and I'm just finishing up with a couple of photos from Afghanistan. This is where the Buddha used to be. Buddha used to be right here,
Yeah.
and then the Taliban destroyed it. And to finish
Wow.
up, I wish the world fair skies and calm waters.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so you could stop sharing. So this has been an incredible journey, huh, Tina?
How do I do that?
I think you go back down to
Oh,
share.
stop share.
Ah, there you go. Great. Great, great. See, that wasn't so painful.
Are we done?
No, we're still talking. So, I mean, it's been a remarkable journey, from the White House to the trenches,
Yeah, from the trenches to the White House and the White House to the
right?
trenches.
Right. And does the poll ever say, I'd love to do the White House one more time and I would do it differently? Did that thought ever seep into your mind?
If I were invited, I would go. Definitely, it would be an honor, no matter who's president,
Right.
to serve again. But I think once is enough. It's
Yeah.
a good. I have a good life here. I have a other than a few missiles.
Yeah, there you go. Right. As you're in Dubai, hearing the sirens go off. Yeah. It's just interesting how, this journey, becomes, life changing. And I really do love those portraits of the staff. I think that's a great, great idea.
Thank
You really should, maybe even the government. I mean, maybe not this administration, but the next one could finance, putting together a book, through the Library of Congress or something like that.
Maybe I'm thinking about donating them to the. I have a set of prints myself that I
Right.
was about to print. I'm thinking about donating them to the Bush Library and
Yeah, I'm
having them.
sure Laura would love that, right?
I think so. I hope so.
Yeah, she could write the forward for the book,
There you go.
right?
She did
Or
write
I,
forward for Smithsonian Magazine. Did a
right.
piece on
Yeah,
them.
I mean that could also be, and that's sort of interesting to see if you couldn't get quotes from the past first ladies and presidents who are still alive. Something about the staff could really make it sort of compelling, and with Laura being behind it, you really could push that through.
They all knew them. I remember when Chelsea Clinton came to visit, and the entire staff just surrounded her and was
Oh, is
hugging
that
her.
right?
Yeah, I mean, they raised her. I mean, obviously
Yeah,
she was her parents,
yeah.
but she grew up there, so it was lovely to see. I mean, there's definitely a familiar bond between the staff and the presidents.
Yeah, you would assume that all those young people have some memory of the staff, right? I mean,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Even the Ford kids or the Reagan kids, right? I mean, I don't know. Did the Reagan kids live there, or were they too old by that
I think
time?
they were all grown up by then.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
just wondering. It's-
yeah.
or even Carter's young Amy, right? Amy Carter.
Amy Carter, yeah, I
Yeah, right.
didn't
I mean,
mention.
she lived there. Uh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Very true. Well, I cannot thank you enough Tina, for
Thank
doing
you
this.
so much for having me.
Yeah, this is it's great to get your insights into, a piece of our history. And you did a wonderful job. So thank you so much for
Thank
doing this. And I will let you know when we're actually going to run it. So if you're up late night partying and you want to jump into
you.
answer questions,
Okay,
you'll be around. And but I can't thank you enough for doing this. So thank you, and please be safe there in
we
Dubai.
will. We will.
So thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be in touch. Thanks, hon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. This and so there you have it. We can unmute everyone, Jay. Um, yeah, they just both of them, just it's just a nice, pleasant sort of experience of them covering. It's interesting what you were saying there, Robert. If and I hadn't thought of it in that way. If you were, and I would assume most of the photographers are Democratic leaning. I don't know that those folks were one way or the other, but I think they get humbled by the office itself. That's what I think, or that's my idealistic thinking around
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But you're right. I mean, if you were hardcore one way or the other, that certainly would be hard to cover. Mhm. Um, yeah, and if anyone else has any comments or questions that, or just a thought, unmic yourself. Yeah, Linda?
Frank, do you know if Tina is covering this war now since she's right in the middle of it? Did she say anything?
I don't know that. That's a good question. Actually, I'll reach out to her, and who she might be covering it for.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's sort of interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
If she's doing that, I don't know. I don't know. It didn't sound like she was doing that when we spoke, or at least at the moment. But now it's 3.5 weeks later because I
Oh, is
I
it?
think
Okay.
we recorded about 2 weeks ago
Hmm.
because she knew that because it would be in the middle of the night for her. Um, but yeah, yeah, it's always nice, to pull back the curtain there and see what's going on in the White House and all that stuff. I feel like for myself personally, like a child. Like you just want to know more of those
Yeah.
things and how does that transpire and this and that. Um, but yeah, I think they both did a nice job sharing,
Just
their
feels like a
insight.
whole nother time.
Yes, that's really what it is. I mean, the dignity that the Bushes had for the White House itself, right, is it's so apparent. It's so different. You imagine what's going on there now. It's like what a shit show.
You
You
don't
know,
you don't
It's so,
see some of the photography you see informal photos from their life in the White House or the Crawford Ranch or wherever it is.
yeah,
You don't see that, at least from this White House. You only see official event
yeah,
photos and
yeah,
stuff around his where he's publicly, facing the
right.
press or, in the public. So you sort of miss that here today.
The nuance of what's going
You only
on,
get
right?
official, stuff that any of the press photographers could have taken almost,
Right.
other than the angles that they can shoot from, etc. Because the
Yeah.
White House probably could walk around where press can't just walk around.
Right. And you still have to get it approved by someone before you can release too, right?
The White House photographers might have
Yeah.
to. The press is independent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw a special on Obama, and the photographer, I think, had done several presidents. He was like the White House photographer. I can't remember his
Pete
name.
Souza, you mean?
Yes, yes, thank
Yeah.
you. Um, and the one on Obama, he had complete and total access, he said.
Right.
And his pictures were fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
We had Pete Souza on a while back and he
or
showed us.
maybe that's where I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the one who really had the access was David Hume Kernley, with the Ford administration. That still stands out as I mean, he's in the bedroom with the Fords in bed, with the cabinet is just incredible. I mean, really incredible. I think that's the gold standard for access. Um, yeah. And it's interesting how all these people, like David also, um, they end up being friends, with the family, for, ages afterwards. It's really
Yeah.
a humbling experience, that you get yourself, to be part of their world and part of their lives, for on and on and on.
It's very intimate. I mean,
Yeah.
you're with them at almost every situation.
Yeah. I mean, Pablo is riding bikes with the president. He could find himself in Texas. Let's go for a ride. And, Bush would say, okay, I'm ready. It's pretty funny. So, yeah. So, we have on April 8th, we have another photographer, Mary Daly, another White House photographer, who'll be speaking with us. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
Which
And
president was she? Which president did she work for?
um I think that was Clinton. Don't hold me to that, but that's what I
It's
think.
a Wednesday. Oh, I might
Yeah.
be able to do it.
Yeah. And May 6th, which if you're keeping score at home is Willie Mays' birthday, but that's not the point. May 6th, we have a NASA astronaut who will be speaking to us. So I'm sort of excited about that with David Burnett, who covered a lot of the Apollo launches. So that'll be a special night. That's May 6th. Um,
May 6th.
yeah, just put that in your pocket there.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
All right.
I just
Um,
want to say thank you for this. This is wonderful, Frank.
yeah, great. Thanks, Harris. Thanks.
Um, as
I'm
you know,
so
I,
sorry I missed the beginning of it.
Yeah.
I've been doing a project about photography in the presidency for the past 20 years. So I've interviewed
Mm.
President Ford, President Kennerly, President Carter.
Wait, Kennedy wasn't a president.
No, I mean, well, in his mind, he probably was, but no, but President Ford. But David, I asked David and President Ford the same question, and and President Ford said, one of the reasons for the access is that they knew David before,
Mm.
the transition happened, and they trusted him and they liked him. He was young, he was great. He was, fast and smart on his feet. And but the president said one of the most important things they could do was literally lift up the curtains. And I asked First Lady Ford about that. I asked Betty Ford, and she said, "Yeah, we when people talked about a darkened, White House, we meant it literally. Like literally, they had to go in and open up the windows and open up the shutters, and they needed light in the actual White House, but also they wanted to send the message without equivocation that the White House was back to being the people's house. And they felt, and so one reason the access was so great for David, matched only by Yoki under LBJ, was that they really wanted to make sure that the presidency wasn't seen as this walled off ivy tower. And Kennerly's work, probably above all, was really a huge part of that. Kennerly and the people he brought in caused huge animosity with the people who'd been there, because if you look at the numbers of photographs, I think they told me David shot more photos in like the first 3 months than the whole Nixon administration had done. And a lot of the old Nixon people were grip and grin photographers. They were very traditional grip and grin photographers. And then you had this young hotshot with Leicas and Olympus OM1s, and they were shooting a lot of film, and the older crew were pretty annoyed by that. By comparison, Carter was the only contemporary U.S. president who didn't hire an actual personal photographer to the presidency, because there's a pool of staff photographers that are operated, at least they used to be, through the U.S. Navy as kind of a civil service liaison. And so they had, and he just felt like, I already got photographers. Why do I need to hire them? He also didn't hire one of his closest friends, who'd been with him from his very first political campaign, who was in charge of the entire inauguration. And then he was just said thank you and goodbye. And so there was a kind of a, I would say, a cluelessness to how the Carter White House operated. And because of that, we don't have the record of Carter that we had previously because we didn't have a Yoki, we didn't have a David Kennerly, we didn't have, the photographers tonight. You didn't have, Pete Souza is really astonishing, and and so it's really it's very interesting, and of course Pete Souza, if you haven't read it, published an astonishing review of the Trump's use of photography in the White House, in which he
Mm.
posits it's completely unprecedented. Like instead of the press office, releasing a few dozen photos a week, they're uploading thousands of photos every day. And I think it's going to their Flickr account. I mean, it's astounding. I'm still on the White House press list, and I can't tell you how many emails a day I get from the White House with press, Trump did this and it's the greatest country and it's the greatest this and that. And before, you'd like under Obama or Bush or any normal, president, you'd get a press release that would say, we're doing photo mapping of the Southwest in order to look at climate change. We've asked well-known photo editor Frank Mio for commentary on its relevance historically. The White House press releases say things like, according to meteorologist, Fox News meteorologist, climate change is a hoax, and you read these things and you just kind of think somebody's on shrooms in the White House, but that's what you're getting. So one of the things that Sousa said we should pay attention to with Trump is you never see the photographs we saw today. You don't see
Mm.
Trump alone with a small kid. You don't see Trump talking to people. You see Trump behind his desk, and that's almost all you see. And so it's a really interesting. I mean, as a historian, of course, I'm going to look back at this and think, how do you make sense of it? But in many ways, it's a genius use
Figure
of
it out.
social media to keep anybody from paying attention to the other things really happening, because those are never mentioned and those are never discussed. But instead, you
Harris,
have
wait,
this.
just one thing. Can you tell us about the project you're working on? Because you mentioned it like as a quick sentence. What are you working on, and when do we see it, and what is it about?
My mother, who passed away, had the same question. Um, the
I'm
it's
representing you, Mom.
Yeah, and okay. So this started back when I was teaching in California, and I was very involved with the different ways that the flag raising at Iwo Jima were being presented. You had the famous Joe Rosenthal photo of the second flag raising, and then you have the earlier first flag raising, and the people involved in both were treated radically different. Many of the original ones died, and then there was the controversy over Rosenthal, came up, and when they swapped the small pole for a bigger flagpole, and they did that beautiful photo. And so I got really interested in this, and I was teaching photo history, and I taught all about this. And then I mentioned it to Weston Neff, who had been the head of the Getty, and he said, "Well, if you want to use the Getty behind what you're doing, please, you have my blessing." So I started contacting White House and the president, and through David Kennerly, really, I got my interview with President Ford, and he talked with me at length. I interviewed him in Santa Monica, and actually, I have a photograph of me with David Kennerly when I was like 13 years old, and I was a photographer for a student newspaper, and my mom worked at Pepperdine University, and she got me into a rally with President Ford and John Wayne. And David saw me, met me, and walked me up to the front row. I mean, I was just like zinging, and I found a portrait of David on the front row when I was 13, and he was, I don't know, 28 or
All right,
something.
so Harris, you're going to answer my question now, right?
Yes. So the question became like, what is the impact of photography on the presidency?
Mm.
Really, not really like the role of photography, but as a president, what's it like to wake up with all these photographers on your lawn? What's it like to have people follow you around? I can tell you that, like First Lady Ford, was not happy. You know, she did not like to wake up. Then, whereas President Ford said, "I don't have a vein bone in my body. I could care less." You know, uh,
Mm.
and Carter was interesting because Carter, his first assignment, which nobody knows about, was as a photographic technician on a destroyer. And then he reeled off all the processes he knew. He reeled off the early color negative, black and white. I mean, he just went through the list of all these processes he knew, and he was very proud of it. So, so the idea is that if I can get my act together, these and other interviews, I interviewed all the chiefs of staff up into the time, Ron Nesson, press agents, you know, the press secretary, and that's supposed to end up as a book one day. So.
Fair enough. Well,
Harris,
you have
can I
the
ask Harris a question?
yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Harris, since you know so much about this, how far back do we go? Do we know how far back presidents hired photographers, that they were White House personal photographers? Do you
Well,
know how?
the common story that goes around, and I urge you to read Doug Brinkley. He's the best of all the presidential biographers. He's quite brilliant. Um, the earliest notion that we have is that Matthew Brady, who actually didn't take that many photos, but he had a studio across from the White House, and of course one in New York City, and of course photographing the Civil War bankrupted Brady. It's a common story. But Brady evidently met with Lincoln, and Lincoln gave him a two-line photo pass that just said "Pass Brady," and that was it. And that allowed Brady access to the front lines and to the, you know. So that's the story that we've all held to in history. I think it's more apocryphal than, you know, evidence-based because we don't have the note, you know.
Mhm.
But that's what we've always gone under.
Okay, thank you.
Beautiful. Well, you know, Harris, when you're ready, when it's done, we want you here. We'd love to see, you know, and hear the stories. I mean, that sounds like a terrific and incredibly time-consuming project. My God, that's
It is.
that sounds
Please get it
really.
done in my lifetime.
All right.
From your
There's your
lips to God's
deadline.
ears, right?
There's your deadline right there, Harris.
Okay.
You got about 20 years. We got
From your mouth to God's ears. But
yeah, there he is. The kind of her. So I want to thank everyone for coming. This was another really pleasant night. And yeah, these folks do you know, for history they do a great job. So, you know, we have all this documentation, and it's really important. You know,
Can I say one more thing, Frank?
all right,
sure.
you're on a clock now, Harris.
Okay, but this speaks to you as a photo editor. So because the White House photographers are employed by the government, nothing can be deleted. You can't delete
Right.
your mistakes. Every single image goes into the Library of Congress forever.
Yeah.
And you
That's a
know,
great thing, right?
yeah, could be. It depends on if you look overweight that day. And
Yeah.
I just want to say one more thing, which is when I was interviewing the head of the Carter Library, he showed me, brought me into and by the way, I urge everybody to go to a presidential library. You can get your Norris card, and you can actually go pick up the actual contact sheets. You can go to the Nixon Library and pick up the actual silk finish, of course, contact sheets from the presidency and look at them. I mean, it's really great. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's just very exciting. Anyway, so he told me the story. I don't know if you remember, but President Carter was in a rowboat in his pond, and this like beaver or something attacked him, and he's
Right.
out there alone, and he's got this oar, and he's just smacking the hell out of this
I
thing
remember.
because he knows they're dangerous. Anyway, so that became a news cycle, but they didn't release the photos. Evidently, I think it was Reagan's first day they released the photos just
Was
to embarrass Carter, you know.
really.
So like, so you know, what I learned from all this is that these are some of the pettiest people you can imagine.
I bet.
Can I add a
Yeah,
quick story?
yeah. No,
In
it's up to
the
Frank.
today in
Yes,
the
go.
today in the east in the West Colonnade, which is a walkway, an outdoor covered walkway in the White House from the main building to the Oval Office. Today, Trump, this is new for this administration. Trump has a portrait, usually black and white, of each president, and below it is a bronze plaque which gives something about it. The one exception
Yeah.
is for
Obama.
Joe Biden, which just shows an auto pen and the bronze plaque below it, which has a fair amount of words. I could never get time to read it. The first words are "Sleepy Joe Biden." Like this is engraved in brass, on this plaque, which like I said, they always rush us through. I probably should take a quick photo. I mean, somebody probably did that. I mean, talk about
Yeah,
petty,
it's
but
unbelievable. It's
I'm surprised
I've seen it
Obama is
myself.
up there.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that's why I say, when you see these photographers, documenting this White House or that, there's such a dignity and there's such a respect for the office. I mean, what a schmuck, Trump looks like for doing that kind of stuff. But that's
What do you mean looks like? He is.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah, that we're living in this alternative world is something else.
Nice.
With that, thank you all for coming.
Thank you for
But sir,
doing it.
but Harris, really, when you finish, and you should finish because it's important to all of us. Yeah, come and share stories. We'll put you on a timer, but
I'm going to be 80 in December, so
yeah, we could do a
that's your
week.
timer.
Move it along, Harris.
Yeah, we'll put you on we'll do like a Jerry Lewis telethon where you just go on for 36 hours. How many hours did Jerry Lewis do at this telethon? My God, that went on forever.
You tell me Harris gets $100 if it's 45 minutes or less. Every 5 minutes over, he gets $5 less. So it's some
Fair enough.
incentive.
All right, there you
Oh,
go.
Wait, does that mean we're doing a projections telethon a la Jerry
Yes,
Lewis?
that's it. A projections
No, this would
telethon.
be a reverse. If he fit the
You're
longer he
right.
goes, the less money he gets.
That's
Projections, the
it.
OnlyFans edition. Right.
Yeah, we don't have a budget so that we got to let them go. So it's a freebie for us. But really, everybody, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
we'll see you next.